All right, once again, South Asia is home to many religions. The most practiced are Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity. At times, religion has worked to bring people together, while at other times it has divided this area. One of the key things when you look at Bangladesh and Pakistan, these two countries were created basically to separate them from the Hindus that live in India. There are areas of Sikhism right here, this light blue right here. Then you have Buddhism, usually up in northern India, Nepal, areas like that, closer to China and Southeast Asia. And a few Jainism religions spark up over here, closer to Pakistan. But for the most part, most people in India are Hindus. We're going to learn a little bit about Hinduism here in a second. Hinduism is the world's largest, third largest religion, and developed over 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. Today, it is the main religion in India and Nepal, with significant Hindu population in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. Hindus worship many deities. In other words, they worship many gods that form their main god called Brahman. Hindus believe in the concept of reincarnation, where you have what we consider rebirth of the soul, meaning that once a person dies, they are reborn into another body or another form or another animal or another person. After death, a person's soul is reborn into another physical life, and this is determined by karma. Karma is something you hear about in a lot of religions, in a lot of, not even religion, just philosophy, I guess, where your good or bad actions, your karma, come back to get you. In this case, they take it to an extreme because basically they say your good and bad karma determine what you come back as in your next life. Karma is kind of like the concept of what comes around goes around. So if you do a lot of bad things to people, but something bad's going to happen to you. If you do good things happen for you, that sort of thing. If the soul lived a good life, it is reborn into a better life. If the soul has lived an evil life, it is reborn into a worse life. This process continues until the soul lives a perfect life. These beliefs and others are recorded in many different texts. The main one is the Vedas and the Upanishads, which is not listed on this list. Buddhism was founded by a prince. Now, the story of Buddha is one that kind of, you wouldn't hear about too much today for sure. Siddhartha was a wealthy prince. He lived his whole life in a castle. His father and mother and people that, lived inside that castle did not want Siddhartha Gautama to see the outside world. All right, so at the age of 32, I think, Siddhartha Gautama left the palace and he saw things that kind of shocked him. He saw dead people, he saw old people, he saw suffering. And he wondered what causes these people to suffer. He saw a man in a yellow robe who had nothing but was happy. So he goes, why does this guy have nothing and he's happy and the rest of the people are suffering? And so Siddhartha Gautama set out to discover what caused people to suffer. And this is what he came up with, the Four Noble Truths. Suffering is a part of life. And one thing he said was selfishness, or the desire for material possessions, is why people suffer. Now you think about that. Is that true? Do we suffer because we want material things that we can't have? Y'all are saying no. What if I said, take your phone and throw it in the garbage? Right. If we said we're going to get rid of all cell phones, about 90% or 99% of the kids at this school would lose their minds, right? I mean, there's kids who don't want you even to take their phones for SOL testing, which that's going to happen. They're going to put all your stuff in another room I mean, nothing's going to happen to your phone, but some people are so attached to your phone that you know, you got to have it and you can't live without it. Imagine if you didn't have a phone, would your life be better?
No.
100% better. You know why? Because you'd be doing other things instead of looking at that phone. What? My son is always like, I want a phone. And I'm like, nope. No, he thinks when he turns 12, he's supposed to get a phone. He's not going to get one. He doesn't realize that yet. All that does is like a leash. A phone is like a leash. When I was promoting shows, I hated my phone. People called me and bugged me. There's people who bugged me about cutting weight. I'm like, I mean, I don't know. Why are you calling me about cutting weight? You should be calling your coach or the person who's training you. Oh, well, I ain't really. Oh, now I get it. You don't know what you're doing. Um, you know, guy called me and was like, hey, man, you know, I've been eating clean. I ate a rotisserie chicken, a piece of rotisserie chicken the other day and some lettuce with dressing on it. Okay, well, number one, that rotisserie chicken has a lot of what in it? Fat ain't bad for you. It's got a lot of sodium. What does sodium do to your body? It makes you retain water. So if you're trying to cut weight, eating salt is the worst thing in the world that you can do. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, right. But I'm not the one that's supposed to tell you these things. Anyway, I don't like cell phones. We'd all be better off. And I'm not a good Buddhist. I mean, I bought my kid a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox Series X. And, you know, literally those things would be better off in the trash. It is possible for people to move beyond suffering if they give away all their possessions and live a life that leads to the Eightfold Path. So people started looking at Siddhartha and called him the Enlightened One. Enlightened One is another name for Buddha. A lot of people have a misconception of Buddha. They think it's the fat Asian man that you see at the Chinese restaurants. That is not him. Siddhartha Gautama is from India. He would often eat 1 grain of rice a day. He lived a life of austerity and where he would say, I'm going to deprive myself of everything. But then he realized that, hey, you know, starving myself to death, you ought to see there's pictures of him where he's all skinny and looks crazy. He realized he's like, starving myself to death is not helping me reach enlightenment. And then he changed that. But it's odd because his death is so not controversial, it's tragic. So a friend of his had him over for dinner and fed him poison mushrooms by accident and killed him. Um, the recordings are taught in the Tripitaka or the Three Baskets. During the next few centuries, Buddhism spread through Asoka and the Mauryan Empire throughout Asia into Southeast Asia.
Hinduism is the ancient religion. It's the third largest religion in the world, with over 1 billion followers. And the majority of Hindus do live in India, which is the only Hindu majority country in the world. For many people, it's very difficult to understand what Hinduism is, because in so many ways, it is more like a disorganized religion than an organized religion. Hinduism has no
That'd be great. Thank you.
It has no common language, no common deity, no common scripture, no common ritual. All of the things that we think about when we think about bounded, organized religion. Most Hindus would believe that we all have a soul, and that soul is a reflection of God. So that individual soul that we all possess means that our natures are inherently divine. We can know God by going inside of ourselves. For Hindus, the soul is reincarnated over many lifetimes, and the goal of Hindu life is to achieve liberation from the cycle of rebirth, liberation from the cycle of suffering. For Hindus, it's not just that humans have a soul, but all sentient beings have a soul, including animals. So in India, one will see the multiplicity of depictions of the divine. You will see the divine represented in animal form, for example. One way to think about this notion of our souls being inherently divine is through the Hindu greeting of Namaste, which is a traditional greeting in India. And it literally means the divinity within me acknowledges and salutes the divinity within you. So in this simple greeting, we see a core Hindu theological belief that's articulated. In the most ancient Hindu text, the Rig Veda, there is a verse that says, God is one, but the wise call God by many names, or truth is one, but the wise call truth by many names. So built right into the heart of the tradition is this notion of pluralism. There is no way to convert to Hinduism. It's different strokes for different folks. When I was growing up as a Hindu, my parents would tell me there are many paths up the mountain, but they're all leading to the same place. And so at its core, Hinduism has a great deal of respect for the other world religious traditions and recognizes them as equally legitimate paths to understanding ourselves and understanding God.
Now, he says that there's no way to convert. There are people that do convert to this religion. But one of the things you'll see is that because of the caste system, a lot of people are sort of kept outside of that religion. In other words, if you're an American and you go over to India, you are considered an untouchable, based on your religious beliefs of being like whatever, atheist, Christian, whatever you are. They look at a person who's outside the caste and goes, that we shouldn't be, this person shouldn't be a part of society. Hindus also believe in arranged marriage. So like if you reach a certain age, you ladies, you're probably around this age, they've already determined who you're going to marry. So they'll be picking out your husband right about now, and it would be based on the caste you're in. Like if you're at the top caste, you're going to get a person who has money and, is probably a priest. Priests are the ones who make the most money in their society. If you're a Sutra or at the bottom of the caste, you'll marry a laborer or somebody like that, someone who works in the fields or something like that. So that's already determined for you. So you don't have to go through the tough process of getting your heart broken or anything, because your parents are going to decide who you marry anyway. Does that sound great? I'm glad somebody's said no, because it's just real interesting because we live in a society, we don't really think that way, especially like men who have daughters. I have a friend who's a fighter. He's like a real tough guy, and he has a daughter. And his daughter, the funny thing is, so his daughter, I guess she was maybe a little bit older than y'all, probably a 9th or a 10th grader or something like that. And so Henzo comes home and he sees a boy sitting on the couch with his daughter. And so he asked the nanny, he has a nanny, he said, who's the boy? And she goes, that's a boyfriend. And then Henzo's wife heard it and was like, no, that's not the boyfriend, that's just a friend. And so Henzo jumps over the couch and takes the guy and is choking him, choking the boy. And then he lets him up and he asks the boy what he does. And he says he plays basketball. And he says, you need to, do a man sport like wrestling. And the daughter's horrified. And for the first 6 months, the boy doesn't talk to Henzo as he dates the daughter. And Henzo wound up liking the guy because of that. He thought that was cool that the boy wouldn't talk to him. And so Henzo's kind of crazy, but one day I'll play that video for you and you'll see. Henzo's crazy, but most people believe that, there's a courtship and you date a girl and then you get married and people fall in love. But in India, they're like, nope, we get to pick who you're, it's really based on the caste, job, occupation.
Buddhism is the 4th largest religion in the world, and it is also a transnational religion, meaning that we find Buddhists in every country in the world, and there are a number of countries in the world that are majority Buddhists. Most Buddhists would think of themselves as belonging to one of 3 schools of Buddhism: Theravada Buddhism, which we find in South and Southeast Asia; Mahayana Buddhism, which we find in East Asia; and Vajrayana Buddhism, which we find in Tibet and Mongolia. Buddhism really starts with the story of Prince Siddhartha, who was born in present-day Nepal 2,500 years ago. When he was born, a great sage came down from the mountain and told his father, the king, that your son will either be a great emperor or a great spiritual teacher. The king was determined that his son would become a great emperor, so he vowed to shield his son from the suffering and misery of the world and kept him inside the palace walls, where he lived a life of luxury and ease. But when Prince Siddhartha was 30 years old, he snuck outside the palace walls and saw for the first time the human suffering, and he vowed not to return to the the palace until he had solved the problem of human suffering. Over the next 6 years, he spent wandering through forests in India looking for truth until he finally came across a tree in northern India. And he vowed to sit under that tree in meditation until he became enlightened. 49 days later, he became enlightened, and he was known as the Buddha, which in Sanskrit means the one who has awakened. Buddhism is different than the other major world religious traditions because it is not oriented around God, but oriented around man. And what Buddha taught is that we create our own suffering, and the path out of suffering lies with us. We can alleviate suffering by changing our perception of ourselves and our world. Buddha taught that we suffer because we crave, because we're focused on ego, and because we assume things are permanent when they're actually impermanent. And for Buddha, the way not to suffer is to recognize that everything is impermanent, even ourselves, and to recognize the transitory nature of all things. And once we do that, then we can achieve nirvana. Buddhists believe that we're already enlightened Buddhas, and we just have to realize that ourselves. And for Buddhists, because their focus isn't on God, we can transform ourselves to become enlightened. We can understand the world in a particular way where we see the truth of our own natures. And in that respect, Buddhism is a self-empowering religion that many people gravitate towards because it doesn't necessitate that they worship any particular deity or engage in any other type of ritual other than meditation, contemplation, and introspection.
All right, so comparing the two religions, both of these religions originate in India. Hinduism is the oldest religion in India, formed over thousands and thousands of years ago. It's kind of crazy how old Hinduism is. And one thing I like about Hinduism is the fact that many of their books and their texts, their holy texts, like the Vedas and the Mahayana, the Rig Veda, often have stories of aliens. That's right. Huge battles in the sky between aliens, people, hiding underground because there's a big war between the gods going on above them. It's really interesting. Some of the things that we'll look at too a little bit as we go along is they believe in many forms of one God, which is Brahman. Most Hindus, people always ask me, why do you teach us about Hinduism? Or why does Virginia, it's Virginia who comes up with this stuff, why do you want you to know about other religions? Well, imagine if you come across a Hindu and you're like, hey, my buddy's a Hindu. We're getting ready to ride out and go somewhere. Where you want to eat lunch at? You want to go to Hardee's and get a Hardee's thick burger? A Hindu's not going to want to eat a thick burger because cows are sacred animals to Hindus. They don't eat cows, and very rarely do they even eat meat at all. One of the reasons is, look at it this way. So your uncle Billy Joe Jim Bob passes away. You go out and kill a chicken and eat that chicken. Theoretically, that chicken that you ate could have been who? Your uncle Billy Joe Jim Bob. Because Billy Joe Jim Bob was reincarnated into that chicken. Then you kill that chicken. Therefore, you are eating the spirit of Billy Joe Jim Bob. So they do look at certain animals. Cow is sacred. They don't really eat meat. There's also a funny tale. I don't know if we have time to find it, but people in India are different. Hindus are different. They had these two cows in India that had real sacred markings to them. They were like, look at these cows. They got the sacred markings of Hinduism. And so people would bring their sick relatives to these cows and try to get the cows to lick the relative. But if they wouldn't lick them, that's okay. They just went around to the other end, and when the cow crapped, they ate it. Okay, and they thought that would help heal them. Hindus are also known for the caste system that we were talking about, where it determines your occupation. I find this fascinating because the number 2 on the caste is the warrior class, which is called the Kastiyas. Now, if you're a Kastiya, you are expected to be and join the military. How many people look at that and go, boy, I'd like to do that? I mean, you know, it doesn't matter who you are. You might be a doctor or a smart person. And what the caste system really did was it took people who were intelligent and said, well, wait a minute, you're not in the highest caste, so we're going to put you out here in the field. So you had people that were doctors that were out working in fields and stuff. You know, it fragmented their society. It kept people who had extreme talent, who could have been curing cancer, who could have been doing great things on a field somewhere in India. Caste system also treats women very poorly. Not, I guess, it's not intentional, but let's say, you know, you're a young lady, you marry a man that has already been chosen for you. When that man dies, okay, and this is ancient India, they've kind of stopped this practice, but it still happens from time to time. So when the man dies, they put him on a funeral pyre. They put a bunch of sticks. Y'all probably seen it in movies like on Game of Thrones and stuff. And then they light the sticks, and it burns the body. While that body is burning, the woman is expected to jump into the fire and die with her husband. And you got to think, why do women do that? Well, they got nothing. The son, the oldest son, gets all the property, the inheritance. The woman gets nothing. So, you know, not it. And they've tried to eliminate the caste system in India, politically, government, but it still exists. I was watching this thing about women who were assaulted by men in India, and they had killed a girl, did really bad things to her, and they interviewed the mother, and they're like, well, she's a sutra. She was out in the fields, and she had the sickle. She could have defended herself, and basically making an excuse for her to, you know, get killed because of the caste she was in. And that's horrifying. You know, that sort of thing still exists. Buddhism is a lot different. Siddhartha Gautama founded it. He was originally a Hindu. He did not emphasize the worship of any god. Some worship him as a god, but very few. Siddhartha Gautama rejects the caste system. He says the caste system is bad, it's not good. And it did not take root in India because there were just simply too many Hindus. So it spread to Southeast Asia. Ashoka, the Mauryan leader, did spread Buddhism to Southeast Asia. Other religions that you find, Jainism. Jains believe in ahisma, or nonviolence towards all living things. This is part of Hinduism as well. 1% of the population. During the Mughal Empire, you know, you had a lot of Muslims that came from the north. Today, it is the main religion of Pakistan and Bangladesh. You can also, it's the largest minority religion in India. You can learn more about Islam when we talk about Southwest Asia, which we've already done. Sikhism is something else that was, you know, created to combine the aspects of Hinduism and Islam. So they believe in one God, truthful living, and equality of mankind. Here you see, and I've actually been to a Buddhist temple in Phuket, Thailand. This is in Bangkok. Most people in Thailand are Buddhists. Most young men in Thailand spend at least a short time living as Buddhist monk. Many of them go in there and think that they're going to, you know, I guess, reach enlightenment and, you know, be good people. And that, for the most part, they are. But most of the people of Bali are Hindu, which makes them a minority in a predominant Muslim Indonesia. Roman Catholic Church is located in the Philippines. About 4/5 of the people of the Philippines practice Catholicism. All right, so that's where I'm going to end today. Now, let's see. I'm going to unlock this. It might take it a second. I'm going to unlock this assignment, which is this right here. Southeast Asia, quick check number 2. This is what you should do. You can use the notes, or you can go into the Zoom class and get the answers. So Unit 8, copy of Asia, copy of this is right here. These are the notes. It's probably easier to use them and look back and forth to get the answers.